All right. Good evening or good morning to everyone who's joining us today for this media roundtable. I'd like to start things off. My name is Andrew Mandel. I'm a Tokyo-based consultant at Keck CNC, and we're a strategic and corporate communications consultancy supporting FinCity Tokyo. And I will be moderating this media roundtable today. Um, so, just to start things off, we will be having a after the speakers introduce themselves, we'll be having a 45-minute panel discussion followed by a Q&A. And the Q&A session, you can submit your questions anytime throughout the media roundtable using the Q&A function, or you can also use the raise hand function if you'd prefer to ask a question to one of our speakers directly. And then I would like to start it off by handing the mic over to Ms. Oyama from FinCity to introduce herself and her organization as they're the main sponsor for today's roundtable. And after that, we will hand it over to each of the speakers to introduce themselves. So, Oyama-san, please take it away.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen first. Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Tomoko Oyama from FinCity Tokyo, and I'm honored to welcome you all to this media roundtable. On behalf of FinCity Tokyo, I'd like to express my gratitude to our distinguished speakers and all attendees for joining us today. We truly appreciate your time and insight. And as we all know, ESG and sustainable finance continue to be key topics in the global financial landscape. However, with recent shift in US policy, we are seeing new dynamic shift emerging. These changes raise important questions about the future of ESG investment, particularly for markets like Europe and Japan, where sustainability remains a priority. So this makes today's roundtable even more relevant and timely. And so before we dive into today's discussion, allow me to briefly introduce FinCity Tokyo. Well, as some of you may already know, FinCity Tokyo was established in April 2019 as Japan's first public-private financial promotion partnership under the leadership of the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. Our mission is to enhance Tokyo's financial ecosystem and improve its standing in global finance. To achieve this, we focus on four key areas at the center of the circle: promoting Tokyo's financial ecosystem, attracting foreign financial institutions, collaborating with key stakeholders, and providing policy recommendations. We engage with global audiences, providing market information, and support financial institutions and businesses expanding in Tokyo. We also serve as a bridge between the industry and the policymakers to improve the business environment. One of the ways we do this is by creating platforms for dialogue and collaboration. Through initiatives like today's roundtable, we aim to facilitate meaningful discussions and foster collaboration on key financial topics. And our efforts are supported by a strong network of members. Currently, FinCity Tokyo has about 60 partner institutions, including major financial institutions, fintech firms, and government agencies. This year alone, we have welcomed around 10 new members. Thank you very much, further expanding our network. With the support of our members, we continue to drive innovation in Tokyo's financial sector and contribute to the global sustainable finance landscape. And as mentioned earlier, the purpose of today's roundtable is explore how the US stance on ESG may impact the global markets, particularly in Europe and Japan. We'll also discuss what these changes mean of sustainable finance and how Tokyo can continue to play a leading role in this space. Through this discussion, we aim to gain insight from our expert speakers and explore ways to strengthen ESG commitment. Open dialogue and collaboration will be essential in shaping the future of sustainable finance. We welcome your questions and look forward to an engaging discussion. That concludes my remarks. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you so much for that introduction. And so today, as we just saw on Oyama-san's slide, we're joined by three very distinguished speakers who I'm very excited to introduce to you all today. And we'd like to start with Mr. Hideki Takada, who is Director of the Green Transformation Acceleration Agency. Takada-san, please take it away.
Well, thank you very much for introduction. My name is Hideki Takada. I am a director at the GX Acceleration Agency. So some of you may not be familiar with the GX Acceleration Agency. No doubt, because this agency just started its work from the July last year. So we are a very brand new organization. So just talking about myself, I'm originally working for the Ministry of Finance for about 30 years now. I have been seconded to the OECD in Paris from 2015 to 2018 and engaged in the green finance. Since then, I'm committed to this agenda in some way or another. And more recently, until last summer, I was working for the Financial Service Agency as the Director for Strategy and leading various financial market policies, including sustainable finance. So next page, please. So now I will give you an overview about the Japan's policy for GX or green transformation. Well, the GX stands for green transformation. Many of you may know, but actually, this is not a proper English word in my understanding. So this is a word invented by the Japanese government. However, well, increasingly, this word is understood as such outside Japan. The GX aims to achieve the decarbonization or carbon neutrality by 2050, and at the same time to enhance industry competitiveness and economic growth of Japan. The key message here is that we do not think that decarbonization and economic growth are in a trade-off relationship, but they can be achieved simultaneously, or even they can be enhancing each other. So that is the core of the GX approach. And in order to do that, we are going to make the investment into the GX of 150 trillion yen, or roughly equal to $1 trillion US dollar in the next 10 years, public and private money combined. And out of this 150 trillion yen, about 20 trillion yen will come from the government budget. And in order to raise that money upfront, the Japanese government introduced a new government bond called Japan Climate Transition Bond, which is the world's first sovereign transition bond. And its issuance started from February last year. However, just 20 trillion yen from the government out of the total of 150 trillion yen, which means that the rest of money, 130 trillion yen, must come from the private sector. And to accelerate the private sector investment is the mission of our GX agency. Next page, please. So here's an overview of the GX Green Transformation Acceleration Agency. So this agency was launched by the government from July last year. And the aim of this agency is to realize the GX, which I described earlier, and particularly to promote the private sector investment. And in order to do that, we will carry forward roughly the three pillars of work which are written in red characters in this page. The first, to accelerate private sector investment through provision of financial support, such as credit guarantees and equity investment. Many GX projects involve innovative technologies and then might be too risky for private sector alone to undertake. In such a case, our agency can step in and provide credit guarantee and mitigate those risks and make the projects go ahead. And secondly, from 2026, the Japanese government will introduce an emission trading system and carbon pricing mechanisms. And our agency will be in a position of administering these systems. And thirdly, we will act as a kind of GX hub, which brings together the financial sector, industry sector, and the policy makers, and promoting research, collaborating with stakeholders, and promoting various discussions and communicating with stakeholders, both domestic and international, to promote the GX and sustainability on a society-wide scale. Next page, please. And here are some initiatives of sustainable finance, which mainly I was reading when I was working for the financial service agency. So the first financing the climate transitions. So Japan is advocating the transition finance strongly for many years, and we established policy guidelines and also roadmaps for several hard-to-abate sectors. And my impression is that there were some kind of skepticism against the transition finance at first in other jurisdictions, but just recent years, the understanding about the transition finance has improved significantly over jurisdictions. Uh, and The second pillar is the promotion of the disclosure. Uh, Sustainability disclosure in the corporate annual financial reporting is now mandated from 2023. And also, we are now working on incorporating the ISSB, the International Sustainability Standard S1 and S2, into the domestic Japanese disclosure framework. And thirdly, we are enhancing the transparency of ESG markets. The code of conduct for providers of ESG evaluation and data was introduced December 2022. Actually, this code of conduct made by the FSA was the first of this kind of discipline made into this market in the world. So now many other jurisdictions are following the FSA's move. Also, we introduced the supervisory guidelines for ESG investment trust to avoid greenwashing by those products. And we are also promoting impact investment. We published, the FSA published the basic guidelines for impact investment last March, and also established the Impact Consortium, which is a kind of the network of stakeholders. So now the many impact investment stakeholders, including those prominent figures in overseas, are now very much interested in Japan's move for this direction. Also, we made it clear that the sustainability and impact investment is not contradictory to fiduciary duty of institutional investors if that is conducted for the purpose of making the financial profits in the medium to long term. I hope that this clarification will help many institutional investors to take on that direction. That's it from me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Takada-san. Next, I would like to hand the mic over to Petra Dismore, who is the co-founder and chief executive officer of North Peak Advisory. Petra, please go ahead.
First of all, a big thank you to FinCity Tokyo and to KEXT for hosting today's event, and also to my esteemed panelists. It's a pleasure to be here, and Japan has been a market of great focus for us. At North Peak Advisory, we are a boutique ESG and responsible investment consultancy firm based in London. To date, we've worked with over 50 plus international companies, both asset managers, raising from hedge funds, private credit, private equity managers, to corporates across various sectors. Essential to the work that we do and how we partner with our end clients is to handhold them to make sure that they can be truly accountable and integrate responsible investment criteria, both on a firm and on a business level, to create value, which is of essence. Also, a stark pillar to our business is education and thought leadership, a clear understanding of what you can commit to, how to best meet allocator, investor, and also regulatory demand globally. I very much look forward to today's panel, and thank you again.
Great, thank you so much. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Miyuki Zeniya, who's Group Chief Sustainability Officer at Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group, as well as the Chief Sustainability Officer of MUFG Bank. Zeniya-san, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for having today. First of all, I'd like to explain about the MUFG, Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group. Yes, please see this slide. MUFG is a comprehensive financial group whose asset size is about 400 trillion yen, and total employee is about 150,000. And also, MUFG is advantage is in a unique business portfolio. Here you can find this with maximizing comprehensive strengths of a group. In Japan, our largest customer base and balance sheet will be the source of our future competitiveness and profitability. Please turn to the next slide, please. Yes. You can find a portfolio, profit portfolio by region. Our exposure in the APEC region is already the largest among other peers. In addition to concentrating our resources in the wholesale businesses and continue steady profit growth. And we are also able to capture stable growth of the US economy. Please proceed to the next slide, please. Yes, here you can find a business strategy. MUFG has launched a medium-term business plan covering the next 3 years, starting from last April. We have integrated the contribution to address social issues into management strategies and portfolio, and position this as one of the 3 pillars of the medium-term business plan, and with further strengthen our initiatives in this area. MUFG has 10 priority sustainability issues to achieve a sustainable environment and society. Among those issues, one of the most important issues is achieving carbon neutrality at the top. You can find this slide. Please go to the next slide, please. Yes. In May 2021, we announced the MUFG carbon neutral declaration, aiming to become carbon neutrality by 2050. To reach carbon neutrality, we have been pursuing various initiatives based on 3 commitments. You can find this here. Please go to the next slide. Yes, MUFG has 4 main strategies for achieving carbon neutrality. As shared in this slide, one is reducing emission from our own operations. The second is engagement and support the clients. The number 3 is reducing emissions from a financial portfolio. And the last one is risk management and governance. Please go to the last page. Okay, this is the last slide. We issue these reports on sustainability for our clients and our investors to understand our initiatives. You can find this report on our website. So it's my pleasure to visit our website. And then I'd like to introduce myself. I joined MUFG from October 2022, serving as Group Chief Sustainability Officer, as already mentioned, and overseeing the overall sustainability activities of the group, including domestic and overseas banking, securities, and asset management and businesses, as well as Chief Sustainability Officer at the MUFG Bank. I started my career at Nomura Research Institute and had the diversified experience in both the financial industry and business companies, including asset management at a foreign investment advisory firm, a CFO at a JASDAQ listed company, and the first female deputy president of a Japanese regional bank, and so on. Before joining MUFG, I had been at Dai-ichi Life Holding and to pushing up to the leading position as a responsible asset owner by promoting integration of global sustainability initiatives and business strategies at the Corporate Strategy Division, as well as by driving ESG integrations and sustainable finance, and also engagement with the investing companies as a long-term institutional investors. That's my career. Thank you very much. I stop here.
All right, thank you so much. So now that we've introduced our esteemed panel, I don't want to waste any time before we get into the discussion. And I'd just like to kick it off by talking about, the objectives of this roundtable are to talk about the impacts and the implications of sort of the anti-ESG movement we're seeing in the US and what impact that's having on not just the US market, but also the Japanese and the European markets. And that's how I would like to kick off this discussion, sort of by giving an overview to our audience of, what exactly is the status of the ESG movement? What is this sort of anti-ESG sentiment that we've been seeing coming out of the US, and what impact has that been having on Japan and Europe? And I'd like to throw the ball to Petra to start the discussion off. I'm hoping you can provide us with the sort of Western perspective, sort of on the ground to those of us who are over here in Japan, sort of far removed from the forefront of this anti-ESG movement.
Thank you very much, Andrew. As I mentioned earlier, we're very fortunate to have clients that operate both out of the US globally and also across Europe that face off to the challenges that we have seen in terms of the anti-ESG headlines as of late. In our opinion, it is more essential than ever to have a clear understanding of what ESG actually means. The acronym in itself is just an acronym. At the end of the day, it's just about good business practice, about promoting risk management and value creation. And thereby, we have seen more demand than ever in terms of helping our clients articulate and navigate their positioning so that it can be truly held accountable and prove the value creation of their responsible investment commitments. So it's about transparency, accountability, and also practical commercial solutions. So it's almost been like a pendular effect from what we saw from the greenwashing a few years back to green hushing, to healthy in between. And we really hope that there's a clear direction of a focus on from values to actual value per se.
Great. Thank you very much. So next I'd like to ask Zenia-san, as a fellow member of the private sector, even though you're based in Japan, how do you evaluate this anti-ESG sentiment, and have you been seeing a heavy impact on Japanese corporates?
Okay, thank you very much. Regarding the current ESG-related policies in the US, the impact could extend well beyond the borders, affecting both companies with operations in the US and those without that. But I believe that it is essential to closely monitor entire supply chains. In the meantime, no matter what political landscape, we will be faced with the need to address the issue of resilience. In the face of increasing impact of climate-related natural disasters, the recent large-scale wildfire in Los Angeles, last year's devastating hurricane, and increasing health repercussions from emissions and infectious disease due to global warming. All underscore the necessity of corporate resilience and public policies to bolster it. I expect that even if the keyword climate change is not explicitly used, pragmatic policies will emerge to safeguard and enhance nations' economic and industrial strengths and protect the lives of the citizens. And the industry will also take actions by physical risk, further materials, I think. Financial institutions have been adjusting our strategy in response to the situation in the US since the end of the year. But the overall direction toward energy transition for decarbonization seems unchanged, where while some variations exist depending on whether the mother market is, the financial sector's overall direction is consistent with continued support for clients and transitions. In the US, support will likely continue, but in a way that align more closely with nations and interests. In Europe, sustainability measures will likely proceed based on the concept of double materiality as symbolized by CSRD. The expectations for the financial sector is high. The Draghi report explained energy transitions must be a key lever to overcome economic stagnations and enhance EU's future competitiveness, emphasizing the need for capital. In Japan and Asia, the transition pathway must be tailored to each country because of the significant inter-regional differences, and it might require more time and require large-scale capital. I consider, despite the challenges and difficulties, the overall direction is unchanged for the financial sector. Our commitment to energy transitions and addressing climate change also remain the same, and we will continue to drive social and environmental progress as stated in our midterm business plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So now I'd like to ask Takada-san from a public sector point of view. It seems Zenia-san's overall assessment is that in general, things are going to keep progressing towards the sustainability path. And I just wanted to get your opinion because in the US we've seen such a huge reversal in terms of ESG policies and what the government is doing. What are your thoughts on the Japanese government's policies and how you think this anti-ESG sentiment will impact the government here?
Well, thank you very much. Obviously, this is a very important question, and we are looking at the situation with the keen interest and caution. Even before the installation of the Trump administration, and after that, I've been discussing with the many stakeholders, both the Japanese and the foreign, including many from the US, to how to evaluate this situation. And my short answer is that the broad direction for the green transition and sustainability it does not change. So the fundamental does not change. So that is my short answer to this question. And because, there are a number of reasons for that. The first, the US is, of course, a very big country, but not the single country. So there are many other countries in the world. And actually, the federal government of the US is not necessarily representing all of the activities of the US as a country. I mean, so even if federal government is taking anti-ESG steps, actually, the real actor, the main actor for this sustainability is the private sector players. And they are doing this for many years because of their business reasons. also they are not doing this out of the political or moral reasons, but they are doing this for their business survival. And so that doesn't change whatever the federal government is saying. Yes, most of the people I've talked to are saying the same thing. And certainly there is some kind of backlash. For example, a number of the US banks have withdrawn from the Net Zero Banking Alliance. Well, sadly, well, just today, it was reported that the first mover as a Japanese, Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation, is going to withdraw from the Net Zero Banking Alliance. However, uh, almost all of those banks which have withdrawn from the alliance are saying that even after the withdrawal from the alliance, what they do does not change. I mean, just as I said, they're doing this out of their business strategy. So alliance or not, they will do what they have to do. And also, in terms of policies, the Japanese government policies is not changed at all, even after the installation of the new US government. So the current Ishiba administration has inherited the GX policies from the previous Kishida administration, and almost totally the new administration continued the previous government's policies on GX and even further developing it. Just last month, the government have finalized a number of key policy documents, including the GX 2040 vision, which is a new policy package. And so, one of the reasons why the Japanese government has established this GX 2040 vision is to provide the long-term direction for all investors and other stakeholders in the face of the many uncertain factors around the world, not only the US administration, but geopolitical tensions and rising prices, particularly the energy prices, and also the surging electricity demand in the wake of the AI and other digital technologies. Under these circumstances, the Japanese government is providing the long-term direction for the decarbonization. Our policy is not changed at all. I'm rather optimistic about this. Even though we are facing this anti-ESG movement, so this will not last forever. It may be only some years, maybe. But the battle for the climate transition is not for some years, but for the decades. Our fight will must continue until 2050. That is the reason why the broad direction is not changed. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very comforting to hear. But I would just like to go back to your point about banks withdrawing from the Net Zero Banking Alliance. And I wanted to ask our panel, there are a number of these global frameworks, not just the Net Zero Banking Alliance, but across various industries and even government frameworks. And I think we're all aware that on the first day of the Trump administration, one of the first things he did was withdraw the U.S. from the Paris Agreement. Do we think that this is a trend that we're going to see continue, having governments and organizations withdraw from these global frameworks? And more importantly, do we think it's important whether or not companies and governments stay in these frameworks as long as they continue to, implement their sustainability practices as planned? And I would like to start off the discussion with Petra from the US-EU point of view. Curious to hear what you think.
Well, from a geopolitical perspective, I think it's interesting to see the individual country stances in terms of local regulations. Yes, indeed, we've seen with the recent release of the omnibus watering down of CSRD, CSDDD. However, it is not going away. Companies still have to commit in terms of their double materiality assessments about the bottom line. Associations, as you said, we've seen a bit of an exodus from the Net Zero Banking Alliance. However, we're also hearing echoes that many of the banking institutions are still committed internally to goals. There's just the fear of what they're vocal about in the market. I think it is an airing out currently, and I think the only way is forward, as my fellow panelists said. And the issues are not disappearing from a climate risk perspective in terms of biodiversity, and we cannot operate in silos. And potentially this is where corporates then have to take a stronger stance about their commitments and to move things forward.
Great. Zenia-san, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, almost. I echoed her. And actually, and also when the Net Zero Banking Alliance initiative started, it was a mean to join the kind of initiatives. But after this, we passed a few years, so we have the some kind of framework from that. So, and also as I already mentioned about that, already the physical risks emerged. Not only for the financial institution, but for the corporate clients. So we have to survive under this in this circumstances. So we have to proceed a real action to this situation. So that's the timing, I think. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. Thanks. And Takahata-san, from your perspective, do you have anything to add about how important these intergovernment frameworks are, like the Paris Agreement, or do you think as long as the governments championing sustainability remain consistent, it's not a huge difference whether or not these frameworks stay in place?
Yeah, of course, those intergovernmental the frameworks such as the Paris Agreement and other international fora are very important. And of course, it is unfortunate that the US again have withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, but that does not last forever. So of course, the U.S. administration may change in the future, and so I hope in some day they will also come back to the Paris Agreement. But in any case, the US is not the only the country in the world. So this is a global fight, and still, the vast majority of countries working together for this the common purpose. And I think the international the effort for the climate transition does not change in the long term. But we're just well, we are facing this kind of the turbulence. I think all the more it is important for Japan to take the lead more internationally, together with other the fellow countries, of course, including the UK or EU or Asian countries. So I think we must change this the kind of negative occurrence into even an opportunity, for the better outcomes for Japan and for the world.
Excellent. So I really like this point you brought up about other governments, other people, other bodies stepping forward to take the lead on ESG. And I wanted to ask Petra and Zenia-san from a private sector perspective, what do you think should people be doing in this area? Do you have a wish list for what other governments and corporates should do now that the U.S. is no longer instead of taking the lead, is actively, become sort of a dampening force on these efforts? How do you think other people should rise up to lead in this area? Let's start with Petra, I guess.
Here again, I think it's important to highlight, which Takahata-san mentioned, is that the US isn't the pure and only driving force, and this gives an opportunity for countries like Japan, other European countries, to step up and take the lead, and also to set the example and to be diligent in terms of that they are long-term commitments in place. There will be no stepping down. but it has to be through pragmatic solutions, hand-holding, where corporates, financial institutions can meet the expectations and evolve with the new market and risk parameters that are coming into play. So there has to be that alignment and also transparency and further education and understanding of what metrics are available out there, what data is to be used, and again, to handhold, to not overcommit or to overpromise, because then you lose the power of your promotion in terms of promoting responsible investment and sustainable finance as a whole. It has to be pragmatic and commercial.
Great. Zenia-san, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you very much. Japan's social structure are shaped by the post-war reconstruction, lack of natural resources within the country, and aging population offers valuable experience that can serve as a reference for other countries, I think. Japan is in Asia, with many emerging economies, leverage past experience and know-how can beneficial, and we aim to contribute to Asia's transition. In addition, as an impact of climate change became more apparent, there is concern about the gap between the rich and the others. We must widen. Developed countries had the capacity to address these impacts, but emerging countries are likely to suffer greater blows. This widening gap could also negatively affect social stability. Given the significant economic disparities within Asia, just transition is the key issue that we need to consider. MUG is actually a way of these responsibilities and opportunities Japan should fulfill and offer, and we are already creating the environmental and accelerating Asian transition. For instance, we have developed a transition white paper that outline the direction and necessary efforts for decarbonization in Asia and Japan. We serve as the chair of GFAN Japan and also as a financial institution with a global portfolio and a strong presence in Asia. We are fully committed to continuing to demonstrate leadership in this region. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm wondering, in terms of, again, staying on this theme of leadership, what are the things that the various international financial centers around the world can do to sort of help corporates take the lead and create an environment that's conducive to promoting these sort of sustainable finance initiatives and just transition and things like that. And I'm hoping Takara-san can kick off the discussion from the public sector point of view.
Yes, thank you. Japan is aiming for becoming the prominent financial center in the world. And yes, when I was working for the Financial Service Agency, I worked very closely with the FinCity Tokyo and Tokyo Metropolitan Government and other cities in Japan to make the financial centers in Japan. And of course, there are other financial centers in the world, and well, including Japanese financial centers, many financial centers are very much focusing on sustainability agenda. Because sustainable finance is no doubt a key pillar among those financial activities in the future. And so the Japan is no exception. And I'm sure that the Tokyo Metropolitan Government and also FinCity Tokyo very much focusing on the sustainable finance as a very priority agenda. So I think those the cities in the world, together with those corporates and financial institutions, they can work together. So just as I said before, actually the government is not the main actor in this initiative, but private sector is taking the lead in promoting those necessary investment. So I think there are many opportunities for those financial centers in the world, including the Japanese ones, to take forward this agenda further.
Sanya-san, from the perspective of an organization that's active in so many different financial centers around the world, do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, I'd like to add some regarding the blended finance. The blended finance is another essential tool and a hot topic, as you know. As heavily discussed at COP29, the expansion of blended finance through public-private risk sharing is anticipated to fulfill a sustainable portion of the funding needs for climate change in emerging and developing countries. A prime example of efforts to expand blended finance is Project Gaia, a public-private partnership fund and promote funding for climate change adaptation in countries in Africa, Latin America, and South Asia. We are participates as the only funding member from Japanese banks. So I'd like to promote this kind of blended finance. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Petra, from your perspective, in terms of what financial centers can do to help promote an environment conducive to sustainable finance, what's the current environment like in Europe? I know we've seen a pretty big shakeup with Brexit, with there sort of being a divide between London as the traditional financial center and Brussels or a continental-based financial center. How has the sort of U.S. backlash uh, impacted the financial center situation in Europe?
I think today what we've seen, it's about each European centre then taking their position as a financial leader and who and what they want to be. In the UK, it's been very positive to see, for example, just earlier this week, one of the largest pension funds, the People's Pension Scheme, came out and said that they'd appointed a 28 billion mandate where they prioritize sustainability, active stewardship, and long-term value creation. And by aiming to be not market leaders, but setting example in that way, that the pools of capital in the respective geographic regions, what priorities they have in terms of sustainability and the actual value creation that is generated is essential, and collaboration, as we're seeing today with this panel between different countries.
Great, thank you. So I also, while we're talking about, financial centers creating an environment conducive to sustainable finance, I also wanted to talk about, what are the sort of the other things that uh, both the public and private sector can do to help promote sustainable finance. And one thing that we've seen discussed a lot recently is disclosure requirements and disclosure frameworks, which, until recently were consistently being expanded in terms of, non-financial disclosure items and things like Scope 3 emissions, consistently expanding. And now we're starting to see a lot of those disclosure efforts in the US. One example is particularly around DEI, a lot of those being rolled back. It would be great to hear the panel's thoughts about how much this should be led by the private sector, or if the public sector should be taking the lead in, in enforcing or establishing these disclosure requirements. Takata-san, it would be great to get your thoughts on this.
Well, thank you. Obviously, the sustainability disclosure is developing was so rapidly in these years, and the recently the ISB established the international sustainability disclosure standards, and just as I mentioned in my sorry opening remarks, Japan is endorsing the ISSB and now working on incorporating those standards into Japan's domestic disclosure framework. And so many corporates in Japan are working very hard on doing these sustainability disclosure activities. So that is clearly a necessary achievement. And however, so just as you mentioned, there are the kind of anti-ESG sentiment coming up in the US and some other areas. And well, not only about climate, but also about the diversity, DEI things. So there is some kind of backlash against those movements. However, what I think is that now is the time for coming back to the basics. So why, in the first place, we are doing this? I mean, disclosure is not for the sake of disclosure, but because uh, we believe that those sustainability is essential for the future growth and survival of the corporate. And so we do that and then disclose that. What we need is that those disclosures based on the firm belief that that is essential to the corporate strategy and the future growth and value creation. And if you know the disclosures and sustainability activities are based on such the firm belief, then I think nothing should change. And so, if you are just refraining from those activities, then you might reconsider why you are doing that. And so, what is the purpose of this activity?
Great. Thank you so much. Zenia-san, do you have anything to add, especially from the perspective of a Japanese financial institution where, in some instances, Japan has been sort of slow to align with global disclosure requirements?
Yes, actually, I don't think the Japanese corporations are not slow to the disclosure for the global framework, but actually a little bit different from the aspect from the other peers. But actually, I'm totally echo with the Takada-san's idea, and also the for each companies, this is a good timing to reconsider what is the materiality for each companies and for the sustainability aspect and sustainability is kind of the resilience to show the resilience of each company. So this is a good timing, not only for the response to the climate change, but also for the innovation. Especially for the Japanese, most of the Japanese companies, innovation is the key for the future growth. And there is a little bit lack of diversity compared from other global countries. So that's the reason we have to continue to diversity for the future growth for the especially for the Japanese companies. Thank you.
And finally, Petra, it would be great to get your perspective on this, especially, one thing that I think would be interesting to hear from you, given the, breadth of your client base is, will we see, the primary goal of disclosure requirements is to give investors better information to make decisions about the companies in which they invest. And has there been any backlash from investors who have found these disclosure requirements helpful and are now at a loss that some of them are being rolled back? Or is that something you think we could see in the future, or is it totally out of the realm of possibility? Would be great to get your thoughts.
First of all, nothing is impossible, but I think it's important to have the clear understanding that it is very nuanced, and we have to move away from the misconception that disclosure equals labeling. It's down to financial materiality, what is applicable to you as a business and what your capacities are on a firm and business level in terms of employees and where you can be held accountable and the underlying data that is relevant. So it has to move forward. And here I actually think that many countries can benefit, from a leapfrog perspective to see the mistakes that have been done in the past where there isn't a simple copy and paste and how it can be applicable and practical in terms of application.
Great. Thank you for that. So, moving forward, it seems like the general consensus of the panel is that, these ESG headwinds that we're seeing, particularly led by the US, while they're having some impact, the general trend is that this focus on sustainability is going to continue more or less unabated, even if, corporates and governments in regions outside the US will continue to take the lead. And so I just wanted to get your opinion on what would be your number one sort of wish list item to help, you know, ensure that this sustainability trend continues unabated? What would be the number one thing that you would like to see to sort of reassure investors or governments or corporates that are worried about, whether or not uh, this is going to continue or, will sort of go off the rails? And I'm wondering if maybe I could ask Petra to start on this.
Yes, of course. There, I think it is about a clear understanding about long term how responsible investing, sustainability is about creating and building resilience as an entity, regardless if you're private or public, and to make sure that there's education, understanding of what metrics are relevant, and the essence of accountability, not to overpromise, not to overcommit, but to always move forward.
Great. Well said. Zenia-san, do you have anything to add from your perspective?
Yes, we have to watch the reality more, more carefully. And also at the same time, as you know, regarding the talking about the sustainability, there's many people talking about the data lack. But as you know, already AI, some companies using to evaluate by using the AI, and also the data is accumulated compared from the last 5 years. So I think not only the financial institution, but also the corporate clients have to think about in the future, for the future with a long perspective. But at the same time, you have to think about how to use the AI to forecast for the future. Thank you.
And Takara-san, from you, what would be your one wish list item? I know the Japanese government has been famously consistent in its policies. Do you think that's been a good thing, or are there some areas in which you wish the government would move more quickly?
Yeah, I think yes, just as I said, the broad direction will not change, should not change. But having said that, I think now is time to rethink about the kind of our approach to the transition. I mean, the Japanese government is advocating the concept of transition finance, the need for the gradual and realistic transition for decarbonization for many years. The reasons behind those anti-ESG movement, I think some part was politically motivated, maybe, but well, more than that, my sense is that there's a kind of accumulating frustration against well, too hasty move for transition or decarbonization, maybe. Certainly, there were certain stakeholders who had frustration about the current movement. Some people were feeling marginalized by the current move towards sustainability and decarbonization. We have to keep on our ambition and robustness, but at the same time, we must be practical and inclusive. I think in this sense, Japan's transition approach, I think, is now all the more important for the other jurisdictions as well. I hope that if we can develop further this kind of realistic and inclusive approach, is then maybe it will help even those U.S. Stakeholders come back to this agenda in the near future.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and I think Zenia-san also mentioned taking a closer look at the reality. So that seems to be a recurring theme is taking a realistic approach to transition and an inclusive approach. And Petra, this may be a difficult question that I'm about to throw to you, but this sense that people were feeling left behind and that the approach was too hasty. I know that there are a lot of people that feel the opposite, that not enough is being done and that we need to move more quickly, um, from your position, what kind of voices are you seeing in the US and Europe? Is it more this sort of, taking a realistic, uh, sort of slower, thoughtful approach to transition, or is there more sort of a sense of urgency, which I know has especially been a topic in Europe in terms of reliance on, for example, Russian fossil fuels for energy and things like that?
And I think that's been further increased with the current geopolitical stance, with tariffs, transparency that's needed in terms of understanding of your supply chain and dependency. I think you'll always see the two sides of the spectrum, those that ostrich, head in the sand, not looking to make any changes or take this as an opportunity to halt action, to those that are more passionate. However, there has to be a healthy in between. It has to be practical. It's about walking the talk and talking the walk, and not setting unrealistic goals and targets that won't be met. And as the result will be a loss of credibility in that regard. Yes, there is a stark sense of urgency with climate change and what is happening. However, it has to be able to be implemented and proven in terms of a value creation angle as well for it to truly be integrated.
Oh, thank you so much. You mentioned supply chain, which is perfect because we've received a question from the audience on exactly that topic. So even though we're still a few minutes early, I was hoping to transition to the Q&A session so we can address this supply chain issue, which I think is really interesting. But before we do so, does anyone from the panel have any final comments to make? Of course, also after we do the Q&A session is fine as well. So. No? All right, great. Um, so we received this question from the audience about, the importance of monitoring supply chains. So we're wondering what level of cooperation has been established globally to maintain effective and efficient supply chain monitoring, and who takes the lead on monitoring supply chains? Is it the public sector or the private sector, or should it be the public sector or the private sector? And so I'd like to, there's, more to this supply chain issue, but I think I'd like to kick it off there with, who should be taking the lead in terms of monitoring supply chains, public or private sector. And I'd like to ask Takada-san first if you have any opinion on this.
Well, who should take the lead? I think that is, must be done in the kind of co-working between the private sector and public sector. Of course, the public sector is the main driver for the green transition and sustainability. And also, the financial institutions and the corporate sector, the industry sector, can work together and must work together to implement the transition for the whole of the supply chain. And the actual financial institutions will be in a better position to look at all the supply chain of the large corporates. The financial institutions in better situated to help those client corporates. However, in certain jurisdictions, but not certain jurisdictions, but in Japan too, those green transition is well, quite often very risky and not necessarily profitable in the short term. So in that case, the public intervention is essential. Just as mentioned by Zenia-san, blended finance approach may be very much needed, well, including in Japan, but also more in other emerging economies.
Zenia-san, I'm hoping you can add a little bit of context about sort of how financial institutions can cooperate with the public sector on monitoring supply chains, and also, what the role of financial institution is in terms of monitoring, the supply chain of their whole financial portfolio.
Thank you very much. It depends. I think, for example, in Japan, uh, as Takata-san mentioned about the financial institution is a good position to monitor the whole supply chains. But when we do an engagement with the corporate clients, we cannot push the clients to monitor the supply chains, whole supply chains. But we can talk with the importance of the monitoring supply chains, and also it depends on the countries, because like Japan or OECD countries, there are the kind of the rules and regulations to monitor the supply chains. But in the emerging countries, it is totally difficult, because not only the size of the corporations, but also the operations of supply chains. So it depends on the countries. But I find we have to not only for the private sector, but also we have to communicate with the regulators or other countries to how to make it better and with efficient way. Thank you.
Great. And finally, Petra, anything to add from you on supply chains?
There, I think the only point that I would add there is from an engagement perspective, from a supply chain side, is it realistic that the end supplier, be it a smaller entity, has the capabilities to report the data, has an understanding on why they need to report on that data? And there, I think it's very important across sectors to promote collaboration when it comes to data sourcing and what can be reported on, to understand what your peers are doing in the market and hand-holding around that, so that it can be weighted accordingly when doing your materiality assessments.
Excellent. Thank you. And finally, the last piece to this question, is there a need to limit this discussion to the context of Japan, the US, and Europe, or can we also talk a bit about, the greater Asia Pacific region and Africa, and about what role those regions have to play in supply chain monitoring? And I think I'll ask Zenia-san to kick this off, as I know MUFG is quite involved in sort of just transition and working with organizations in other regions.
Yeah, thank you very much. It is very important, and also we have to think about not only the global north, but also thinking about when we're talking about the supply chain, we have to talking about how the global south countries are thinking about that. So, and also of course, and among global south countries, there are some the government have some regulation to oversight the supply chains, but not many. So we have to talking about how the global south countries are thinking about for the sustainability for the future for their each countries, because there's a lot of gap between the global north and global south. But it is very important to communicate with each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Petra, is this gap between the global north and global south that comes up as an issue for your clients?
Not as it stands currently. That has not have been a key topic. It has been an area of focus that we've seen is from a human rights perspective, which is interesting, that I think will be increasingly in focus for sure, where obviously the north to south engagement comes into play.
Great. Thank you. And Takada-san, from a public sector perspective, do you have any thoughts on sort of global north, global south cooperation?
Yes, so just as I mentioned, when it comes to the global south countries, then it is all the more important for the public sector to help support those activities by the private sector players. Because there are so many risks involved, the country risks, currency risks, and so on. And so, particularly, well, of course, the countries can help, but also the multilateral financial institutions can work together with the private sector financial institutions to support and monitor those supply chains in the global south countries. And so, just as I mentioned, when it comes to the finance, the blended finance approach is very essential, particularly in these areas.
Thank you so much. Great. So we've received another very interesting question. And this one I'm going to ask Takara-san to start off with. But there are new rules on sustainability disclosure from the SSBJ due out this month. And we're hoping you can give an overview of what we can expect from these rules, if there's any difference between the SSBJ rules and the international rules, and if there's any expected impact on these or future rules from the shift against sustainability we're seeing in the US.
Yeah, the SSBJ is going to finalize the Japanese version of S1 and S2 by the end of this month. The draft version was already in public from March last year. There is no secret about its contents. No, my understanding is that yes, they are broadly in line with the ISSB frameworks, there is no significant gap between the ISSB and the Japanese version. But I think more important question is from when and how to implement those standards in the Japanese domestic framework. Here, the FSA is working on this. The plan is to that is going to be mandated well, gradually, starting from the biggest companies to medium to smaller companies. The earliest implementation will start from 2027. And Also, there is some question about to what extent, for example, the Scope 3 emissions has to be disclosed. Of course, the general requirement is to disclose the Scope 3, including, but there may be practical challenges for that. Obviously, they need the many companies need the help from other stakeholders, including the government, for implementing those standards. I think there is a kind of discussion between, the robustness of the disclosure on one hand, but on the other hand, we must be sensitive about the burden that imposes on companies. We must strike a very good balance between the two.
Thank you so much. Zenia-san, do you have anything to add from the private sector perspective on the new SSBJ regulations, and also anything to add about the requirement regarding Scope 3 emissions?
Yes, of course, we are big, large companies listed in the primary stock markets, and we are thinking about we have already started preparing for the disclosure on the SSBJ, but at the same time, the details of the disclosure, not a framework, but also each disclosure statement is not finalized. So when we're talking with the auditors or the consulting companies, they couldn't answer correctly. That's the problem for us to prepare as a preparer. So we are waiting that kind of result we disclose as soon as possible. That's my question answer. Thank you. Of course, including the Scope 3. Thank you.
Yep. Petra, if you have anything to add about the SSBJ regulations, you're welcome to. But any thoughts from the U.S. European perspective on Scope 3? I know the debate about the reporting burden for Scope 3 is something that hasn't been limited just to Japan. So would be great if you have any additional thoughts.
I think very much to echo my fellow panelists, it is the degree of burden that it puts on the corporates. Is it realistic? To get that credibility yet again in terms of implementation is of the essence. But it is something that we have to prioritize going forward. But it is in the burden on what type of corporate, of what size, and within what activity, and the difference between actual data and proxy data.
Great. Thank you so much. So we've received another question. I think this is going to be one for Takara-san to tackle. But there's been some investor criticism of Japan's most recent strategic energy plan, in terms of maybe Japan not being so ambitious in terms of adopting more renewable energy and being slow to phase out coal and reduce fossil fuels. Um, and I know this, especially coal and the financing of coal power plants has been a hot topic in the Japan sustainability circles. Takahata-san, do you have any perspective on this?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm aware that there are many controversies around this strategic energy plan, and of course, no, there are many criticisms against that. It may not be ambitious enough. It is too slow. So I respect all those arguments, and because this seminar is on the record, well, I might have my personal views about that, but somehow representing the government's position about that is that I might want to say that of course, those the colleagues at the METI and the Natural Resource and Energy Agency are doing their best in formulating this new strategic energy plan, so this is something what they practically think that that is the best effort they can make now. And even this the finalized version may not be achievable. So unless very good progress can be implemented. So I mean, so even 40 to 50% of renewable energy, that may not be ambitious enough for some people, but well, just compared with the current level, it will represent maybe many times enlargement of the current renewable energy capacity. And it is well argued that actually in Japan, the solar and well, onshore wind, almost all, so most of the available area already exploited, and so it is very much stretching to the very limit of the expansion. And also, there is a limitation about the reactivation of the nuclear energy. And so concerning these factors, and also we are facing the future uncertainties as well. And so even the widening the gap between the current electricity and what we need in the future in the wake of those AI and digitalization. Well, just what I can say is that there are yes, many arguments about this, and I sincerely respect those arguments. But this is what the Japanese government presented as its best estimate, which currently stands concerning these factors.
Great. Thank you so much. And Zenia-san, I apologize. I should have done my research in advance about whether or not MUFG still finances the construction of coal power plants, but unfortunately, I've forgotten that statistic at the moment. But if you have anything to add on this issue, would be interesting to hear your thoughts.
Yes, I also understand there is a big, huge argument between the NGOs and also the Japanese government. But at the same time, so we have to think about our clients' resilience, because just divestment from the coal power plant is to sometimes for some countries the lack of employment from the factory. So we have to think about just transition, even for make that transition finance. So we have to think about not only the, of course, we have to think about the time is running for the climate response, but at the same time, we have to think about the safe of the employment, and also the safe of the and all the people's well-being at the same time. So we have to think about all the diverse information together and communicate to find a good way to make a good way to the green transition in as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Petra, there's sort of a perception in Japan of Europe and the EU being sort of more advanced in terms of sustainability, and this issue, not just around the construction of coal power plants, but sort of what happens to these sort of, usually called brown assets when they're divested from. It would be interesting, I think, for our Japan-based listeners to hear your perspective on, what should happen to these assets to ensure sort of a responsible transition.
I think, yes, we've been very fortunate by the fact that Europe has always been a market leader in regards to setting requirements and frameworks, promoting sustainable finance. I mean, both from an allocator perspective with the Dutch and Scandinavian investor market, where they've really, recognized the value of integrating ESG factors and regulatory drives, from disclosure frameworks and so forth. In terms of the just transition, it is essential in that regard to address the consequences of stranded assets. Change does not happen overnight, and it is also about the end needs of the market in transitioning from brown to the less brown. Therefore, we need to support that with the hand-holding and the regulatory and financial support that's necessary for that. And yet again, it will not happen overnight. Yes, it needs to happen, but it has to be done in a mindful, realistic, and practical manner.
Great, thank you so much. And we've just received another really interesting question, something I hadn't considered at all. In terms of climate startups, one member of our audience is wondering, with the U.S. ESG backlash, will there be an impact on the amount of investment flowing into climate startups worldwide, including in Japan? And what kind of impact, if any, do we expect? And I'd like to start this off, I think, with Petra, actually.
Thank you, Andrew. There are just initial thoughts around that is the fact that those end capital pools that are committed to supporting and investing in climate solutions remain present. Yes, we've seen a huge step back with the limitations around USAID, but I think again those entities that are committed to it, it will perhaps be a slightly more smaller pool, but that capital is still in place.
Great, thank you. Very reassuring. And Zenia-san, anything to add from you about if you think there will be an impact on climate startups in Japan?
I'm not sure actually. I don't have the latest number, but actually, as you know, thinking about the market of the renewable energy, China is the #1 market. So not only the U.S. but other Middle East market is growing. So I don't think about not only even though the U.S. market is a little bit lagged, but other market the capital flows everywhere. So I don't mind at all at this moment. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And finally, Takada-san, again, I know the Japanese government has been famously consistent with its policies, but anything to add from your end in terms of, the government's support of startups?
Yeah, certainly, yes, the government is supporting the startups, including those climate startups strongly, and that doesn't change. And in terms of the private capital, I'm not the financier myself, but well, just recently I had a conversation with the major manager of the impact investment fund. And so they said that there is still an appetite for those impact funds to invest into those climate startups. And one argument is that unlike the general ESG policies, so the general ESG policies are just excluding the certain industry from your portfolio. So obviously, those excluded may have quite well, the anti-sentiment against such kind of activities. But impact investment is well, not that kind of exclusion, but positively picking up, what is good and profitable. Arguably, impact investment is not that much affected as that experienced by the ESG investment in general. Yes, I think there should be still the, money for that. Yes.
Great, fantastic. And we only have a few minutes left, but I'd like to squeak in one last question if possible. The Japanese Code of Conduct on ESG scoring and reporting has led the way with a similar code implemented in the UK and potentially also to be implemented in the EU. And it would be great to hear the panel's view on ESG ratings versus ESG data. Zenia-san, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on ESG ratings.
Yes, as you know, several years ago, the GPIF made a research on ESG evaluation and ESG score for several companies. And still, I think that each company has some differentiate from each other. And also, we also monitor the ESG rating companies and with feature with teams there, specialists in. And of course, we think of that for the investors, it's very important to think of to use the ESG ratings. But at the same time, sometimes I feel that the some companies have enough staff to evaluate the corporate corporate clients with specialty for the sustainability. So we have to think about to communicate with the rating companies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Petra, anything to add from you on ESG ratings?
No, I fully agree with Sania-san on that topic. It's in terms of what is the underlying basis for those scores and ratings, how that is regulated, and also to keep in mind of the end corporate. Do they have the internal resources to score, and what is them based on?
Great, thank you. And Takata-san, I know ESG ratings are primarily sort of more utilized by the private sector, but if you have anything to add from a public sector perspective.
Yeah, just as I mentioned in my opening speech, Japanese government introduced the code of conduct for the ACA ratings and data providers, and it is followed by other jurisdictions. However, just about 1 year and a half since that code of conduct was in place, and I think we need still some time before we see the real impact those code of conduct may be having on those the quality and transparency of those providers. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. So we're just about finished today, so I'd like to wrap up today's session. First, by thanking our esteemed panel for their time. It was a great discussion today and a very reassuring discussion that, despite any temporary headwinds, efforts towards promoting ESG and sustainability will continue to move forward and we'll continue to see progress, not just in Japan, but in other markets as well. And again, thank you all so much for your time, and thank you to everyone who joined today's session to listen in. Would anyone from the panel like to give any final remarks before we close for today? No? Okay, great. All right. Well, thank everyone so much for their time, and we'll see you all at the next Media Roundtable.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.